Well, good evening. Always through the week as I'm getting ready for a night like this, it's a little less formal, a little. I have a little different approach to the kind of evenings like this than I do to my normal Sunday morning, where there's the outline that I got to turn in early and kind of get some slides ready and everything. And for this, for you guys that are the typical Sunday night crowd, and then not only that, but our second Sunday service crowd, this is kind of like speaking to the honors class, where it's like, you guys get it. I mean, I'm not trying to sell you on anything, not that I try to sell it in people on anything on a Sunday morning, but it's like I don't have to convince you guys of why we're here or what it is that what it is that we're all about. And this ends up being kind of more of a time to encourage and a time to just try to bolster that strength which is already there, and try to lift up a little bit and try to just encourage those that are already involved in doing some good things to continue to keep doing those good things. And so I had some thoughts earlier this week, and then I scrapped them all about an hour ago. So this is even a little less formal than normal, because I don't have any notes or anything. I have a couple of notes up on a slide here in a minute that hopefully y'all remember what they meant, or what the passages meant, and we'll kind of look at a couple of passages and just have some thoughts about those. But the reason I changed what I was going to do, and maybe I'll come back to that thought later because it's appropriate and it'd be a good thing for me to talk about it, even if it's not what you need to hear, but it's something I need to talk about. Here's what was going on at my house about an hour and a half ago. I am a wrestling coach, which makes me giggle because I don't know how to wrestle. At the middle school, they needed somebody, and I said yes. And so yesterday I was at a wrestling meet, and the head coach's wife is in charge of a group of students at the high school that do service projects. And in order to be in this group, it's called K. I don't even know do you know what that stands for? What is K?
Kansas Association for Youth.
Kansas Association for Youth. See there, you've already learned something. I didn't even know what that meant. I just knew it was the K Club at the high school. And they do service projects. And I think they have to do a certain number of service projects to even stay in the club. They've got log service hours and all that. So it's good stuff. You can see them after basketball games picking up trash out of the stands in the roundhouse. You can see them after football games cleaning up the bleachers, that kind of stuff. So it's good. And kids, this is not like a detention club where they get assigned to this club because they've been doing stuff they shouldn't. This is kids who want to be a part of a service organization, getting a chance to go out and serve. So the coach's wife that I work with, she's kind of the sponsor of this club. She oversees it, and she had a group of kids that were getting together this afternoon to go out and rake leaves, but she didn't have her in a yards for them. And I had a yard, and there were leaves in that yard. So she said about 20 kids to my house got there about 3:30, and what would have taken me, I wouldn't have done it. Had I done it, would have taken me hours to do. A group of kids out there is, playing around. They did it, knocked it out in about 45 minutes. It was great. And so about 20 kids. I took a couple of pictures. I didn't get pictures of all of them, but there's a good group. And I knew most of the kids, at least knew kind of who they were. Some of them I didn't know. I'd never met before. But there's one more, and the added little twist in it for them is I told them as they're all walking back, now we've got a big dog and now there are leaves on the ground, so I have no idea where you should step and where you shouldn't. So they were dodging landmines while they raked my yard. And as I sat on my porch and watched them rake the yard, that's really good stuff. I recommend that you try that sometime. Sit on your porch while someone rakes your yard. That's really good. I watched these kids, and obviously there were friends amongst them, but then I looked around and I was like, I don't think that kid knows that kid. And I don't think there's a relationship between those two over there, and yet they're serving together and they're working together. And I can tell you, if I had been doing this by myself, you wouldn't have seen very many smiles on my face while I was doing it. And I think many of those kids had I just like, hey, you know what? I've got a bunch of leaves. Would you come help me rake my yard? And if they came by themselves, one at a time and helped, I don't know that there'd be a whole lot of smiles going on. I think some of them would have come and helped, but you got a group of kids together like this, and there was laughter, and there was energy, and they were cutting up, and they're having fun, and they were working together, and it was really neat to watch. And it just got me thinking about why that is. Why is it that you get together to do this job, which, how many of you just love raking the yard? I don't love it. I do it, I've done it, but I don't love it. And I know none of them, are going home tonight and saying, Mom, that was so much fun, can I rake our yard too? I know they're not doing that. It's not that they love raking yards, but they were spending time together, and they were enjoying having that time with one another, and just being able to be together, doing something that was of value to someone else, that was a help to somebody else. And so it was really cool to watch. And that just got me thinking about some things, and the idea of working together, and how important is it that when we work together. And so it made me think of a couple of Bible examples. Luke chapter 10, of course, is where Jesus sends out the disciples, the 72, on what is called the limited commission. And so, some interesting just little things to think about with that. We know who the 12 are. And when we talk about the 12 disciples or the 12 apostles, we know their names. We can sing the song and we can name them all. Who were the 72? I assume it included the 12. You have to assume that they were part of that. But there's a whole bunch of people that were going out to serve the kingdom of God. We have no idea who they were. But we know that it had an impact upon them. We know that it meant something to them, because they told Jesus when they got back about what had happened. The return of the 72 in verse 17. The 72 returned with joy. They've been sent out to serve, and they came back with a joyful story to tell. And as these kids left my yard, they were happy it was over probably, but they were going to another yard, and they were going to go rake someone else's house. And so there was laughter still as they were leaving. They were returning with joy. And the 72 returned with joy, saying, Lord, even the demons are subject to us in your name. And he said to them, I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven. Behold, I have given you authority to tread on serpents and scorpions and over all power of the enemy, and nothing shall hurt you. Nevertheless, do not rejoice in this, that the spirits are subject to you, but rejoice that your names are written in heaven. And so they came back from that service rejoicing that they had been able to work together in the name of the Lord. And they had seen and done some amazing things that they never would have seen and done had they not been a part of this group that Jesus had called them into. And, that might be a fitting description of the church, that, just being a part of this group, this kingdom, this organization, however you want to think of it, as a body of believers, we're going to see and do some things that we never would have seen and done had we remained to ourselves. And that's a beautiful thing. That's a wonderful thing. And so the opportunity to work together is such an important part of who we are as God's people. In Acts chapter 6, we have another instance, and we'll talk. We could park it in the book of Acts, and we could spend a lot of time there talking about the implications of working with people and spending time with one another in the book of Acts. But in Acts chapter 6 specifically, we have the story of I know one of the old, all I can think of is the Grecian widows. That's not the way the newer translations read it. The Hellenistic widows. In this, I can't turn the page. There we go. The non-Jewish, even if they're from a Jewish background, ethnically they're not from that area where we think of as being around Jerusalem. They were Greek-speaking widows. And so they were being neglected in the distribution of goods and things from the church. I don't think out of malice. It's just there was a relationship with the ones that were already there that had that common language together, and they were kind of being excluded. And so the leaders of the church, the apostles there, say, "We'll appoint 7 men to oversee this work." And I don't think it was appoint 7 men just because it was such a big task and it was more than one person can handle. but it was appoint 7 men because there's something about working together on a job, on a project, that makes its completion that much more meaningful and that much more special. So we had this example of the early church when there was a need, working in groups, working together to fulfill that need. And when you look at, for example, the missionary journeys in the book of Acts, you know, that first missionary journey, who goes? Well, we know Paul and Barnabas, and John Mark sets out with them. And we know that along the way, other people accompany them, at least for part of the journey. And then for the second missionary journey, Paul and Barnabas start out to, you know, thinking they'll go together, but they split up, and each of them ends up taking somebody else. And along the way, Paul, we know, picks up other people, because we start reading, you know, even about Luke joining them. And there's the we section where Luke is obviously with them as they travel along. And so even in the, you know, going out and working out in other areas, there was that desire to bring other people into the work and make sure that we're including people that want to be a part of this work and want to be part of the kingdom, that they can come and feel like they're a part of that mission. And so there's all through the book of Acts, and then we read so often in Paul's letters, you know, about the times that he's sending greetings to specific people, or he's asking Timothy to do this, or sending Silas to do that. And we know that those relationships were just important to Paul, that he always was training and bringing others along to be involved in that work. So there's just so much to be said about us working together. And I got to see that tonight just in a small way as these groups of kids, this group of kids was there in my yard, and they were having such a good time doing something that any one of them would have been miserable doing, but because they were all miserable together, they were having a great time. And they were really enjoying the fact that they were doing work that was meaningful, that was helping somebody else. So that was a great lesson just to observe and spend some time reflecting about and thinking about what that meant. And so that kind of led my thinking down the idea of service, and it got me thinking about Philippians chapter 2. And I probably have shared this thought in the past in some way in a lesson here or there, but it's one that I come back to frequently, just to think about who we are as God's people. Ephesians, Philippians 2, and we know the passage well, and I can say that amongst, you know, the honors class, the Sunday night crowd, because you guys, you've heard this before. I know you have. I know that you've read from Philippians chapter 2. And starting down at about verse 5, have this mind in you, have this mind among yourselves, which is yours in Christ Jesus, who, though he was in the form of God, did not count equality with God a thing to be grasped, but emptied himself by taking on the form of a servant, being born in the likeness of men. And so I've often tried to wrap my mind around this thought of Jesus existing in a form that we would recognize as being a godly form. You remember, Moses wasn't allowed to see God in his glorified form. When Peter, James, and John woke up at the transfiguration, right? That was going on in their presence, and then they woke up and they saw it. They instantly knew there was something different about Jesus because he was in his glorified form. And so they saw him there looking different than they had ever seen him looking before. And so there's something about the form in which Jesus existed in when he was in heaven, when he was in a heavenly state, that is different than the way he existed in his human form. And it says he existed in the form of God, but he gave that up and came to earth. And how did he present himself? Well, he took on the form of a servant. And what did that form look like? Looked like a man. Took on the form of a servant, being found in the likeness as a man. That tells me that when God thought about what we were supposed to look like, and we talk about, you know, being designed or made in the image of God, right? That's not our physical form that's talking about. That's our spiritual being. That's the thing about us that sets us apart from the animals. The fact that God breathed into us the breath of life, and he set us apart from the animals in a special way that instilled within us something that's different than the animals. It's not as much about our physical form when we say that we're made in the image of God as it is about our spiritual form. So what we know about our physical form is that when God designed us, when he made us out of the dust of the earth, he was thinking about how should I make a being that is designed to serve? How should I make that human being look so that they are best suited to serve one another, to serve me, to serve those in need? And so he came up with this shape, this design, 2 hands, 2 feet. He came up with our bodies shaped the way they are shaped because he was designing a servant. And so when we refuse to serve, or when we try to set ourselves above everyone else and think that others need to serve us all the time, and that we are better than other people and don't need to serve them, we are trying to elevate ourselves above what we've been designed to do, who we've been designed to be, and we're trying to place ourselves in the position of God, because God, remember, God has a different form. He's not the form of a servant. He's not the form of one that gets down on his hands and knees and washes people's feet. That's not the shape, the form of God. That's the form of a man. And so when the disciples refused to serve one another in the upper room, Jesus said, well, I've got this form, I've got this shape, I'm designed like a servant. I need to show them how to use what we've given them, what we've designed them to do. And so Jesus showed them how to serve one another by doing what he did. And it's always just been this thought in the back of my mind since I kind of read through this the first time and saw that when I refuse to serve, I'm refusing to be what God has designed me to be. I'm refusing to use the tools that God has given me to help others, to serve others, to do what he calls me to do in his name for other people. But Jesus came here and gave up the form that he had, his heavenly form, his godly form, and he took on this form of a servant so that he could show us what it meant to truly serve, what it meant to truly use the bodies that God has given us. And so he found himself in human form, going on in Philippians chapter 2, verse 8, being found in human form, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to the point of death, even death on the cross. And so Jesus there again, it wasn't enough to humble himself just by taking on a physical form that was different than his heavenly form. He went beyond that and humbled himself by taking on the cross and going to his death on our behalf. So, I mean, that's just something for us to think about as we go out and serve tonight, as we go out and find the opportunity to serve by visiting, or to serve by preparing a meal, or to serve by writing cards, or as you go about your week and there's the opportunity to do something for somebody else. You're doing what God created you to do. You're doing what God gave you your bodies for. You're doing what God has designed us to do. And then how much better when we can do that with someone, when we can do that together and share that joy of service with another person or a group of people. And so those were my thoughts tonight as I kind of sat down and let those kids serve me tonight. That was pretty cool. But it was neat to see them reaping the benefits of that service. And you know, tonight we get the chance to go out and serve others. And we get to reap the benefits of going out and being a part of that as well. We always take the advantage of the opportunity to offer an invitation whenever we're together. And so if you have any need tonight that you'd like to bring before the church, whether it's for prayers or forgiveness or whatever, would you come and make that known while we stand and sing?